Massive welcome to all of you 7,559, I think, today subscribers, our channel members, and of course, first-time viewers to what's going to be a session packed with insights with one of our industry's leading CISOs, Michael Ruppe. But before we bring him on, and for those that are new to the channel, my name's Simon Lindstedt. I'm the founder of the InfoSec Live community, and by sharing stories and best practices, we've had over 127,000 views. Sorry, 127,000 views here on YouTube. Thanks to all of you 7,557 subscribers. And this has all started with the global InfoSec Live community, which is now 5,550 strong and growing every day, where we have study groups, mentor sessions, and regular networking events to help you raise your game in cybersecurity with a new leadership-focused channel, encouraging collaboration and knowledge sharing for our industry's leaders. And it would be remiss of me not to mention our amazing community-driven in-person leadership events in both the UK and the USA, with a full 12-month tour date package being released next week. Check out our events page for more information. 2024 sponsor slots are open, and our next events are on the 5th, 6th, and 7th of December to coincide with Black Hat Europe in London. Links for these and our community site will be in the event description here on YouTube. If you're watching this live, please do like and subscribe. We want to make sure these events are as interactive as possible. So again, make sure you drop any questions in the chat, and we'll do our best to cover them all off by the end of the session. Intro over. Time for the CISO experience. Let's bring Michael on.
Hi, Simon.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Good to have you here. I'm good. I see Steve's in the audience saying it's the host of the most looking good, if cold. Mr. Lindstedt, you know, we haven't had heating until yesterday, and we do now have oil for our central heating. So I may have been a bit ambitious because I find myself beading on my brow, just as you were saying that I look cold. So I'm going to undo the top a little bit here. But great to see everyone in the chat. And Michael, we've spoken once before. We had a chat a few weeks ago about you coming on the show. We're going to dig into the challenges and opportunities of a modern CISO. But before we do that, please tell our audience a little bit about yourself and where you are today.
Thank you, Simon. So basically, for my background, I've been in the field of cybersecurity, or generally information security, for roughly, let's say, 10 years-ish. Basically holding most of the industry certifications that are considered like the gold standard from CISSP, CISM, whatnot. So basically what's out there. I completed all of those to basically, at least from my standpoint, with my younger age in terms of a CISO role as well, to gain at least credibility on paper in the first place. So that's kind of what motivated me to do and all of those, and basically go through the troubles and challenges of studying for them. And so basically since about roughly 2.5 years, I'm in a CISO position with various companies now, basically my second company where I'm in the CISO position. And at least that's pretty much about me as a person. Roughly around 30 years old. Not going into the details there, but so that's me.
You're sickeningly younger than me, I think, is the answer, Michael. Yeah, I'm really interested. I mean, it's such an amazing achievement for you to become a CISO at that young age. Talk to me about the experience that you've had before that's got you in this position, because I'm sure it's not just these exams that you've passed that have got you the jobs you've got today.
No, definitely not. I mean, it was basically when I started out, I was already kind of intrigued by the whole topic of security and cybersecurity and whatnot. So I started digging into that part, and when I started out, I was more focused on like the whole engineering part around about security. And then I got the chance to basically look into audits, support with audits, from ISO audits to general compliance audits, basically all over the company. And I was supporting there with insights from basically the whole engineering part. But also at that stage, I realized, hey, security is much more than just engineering. It's obviously you have like the bigger picture with all the compliance stuff, regulations, laws, and writing your policies and whatnot, defining standards. And so I was like, okay, yeah, that's actually quite cool, and it's way broader than just I don't know, like tweaking system settings and making them more secure and hardening them. And so basically, I just started learning about security stuff, and yeah, kind of, you know what they say. Basically, I went down the rabbit hole in that sense, and basically just started going through content, digging through information, and basically absorbing them all. And I mean, at some point, you obviously come to the stage where you say, okay, you need something to verify your knowledge, and then
Yeah.
obviously the certifications are a good way of doing so. But then, yeah, I figured out that once I basically went through those certifications and I gathered all the knowledge, then I said, okay, basically, what am I still doing in engineering? I need something when I already looked at the whole broader topic and the bigger picture. I need something that I can basically put my hands to work on, and then get into that bigger field of security. And so I started looking around for security jobs, looking at like general ISO positions or security consultancy jobs and stuff like that. And then at some point I figured out, like, hey, why not just apply for CISO jobs? Because I mean, the worst things I can do is basically reject you, turn your application down, and say, hey, no, sorry, you have no experience. I mean, that's the worst thing that can happen.
Yeah.
Best thing is they invite you for an interview. And so I just figured out, like, hey, why not? I mean, just send an application, see how it turns out. And funnily enough, basically, I sent out an application on a Monday, had like the first interview on a Wednesday, got the contract on Friday, and basically quit my job the Monday after. Uh,
Amazing.
then started out in a CISO position. And I mean, to be honest, like the first couple of days in the job, I was like, oh my God, what have I done? Why am I here? What's all of this? But yeah, I mean, it's like they say, sharks are born swimming. At some point, you just have to swim with the flow, get your head into it, and say, okay, I mean, it's going to be a long day, and maybe you still have some stuff to read up on. But I mean, yeah.
What an amazing story. So what role were you doing prior to the CISO role? What was your, for those watching who are aspiring to be CISOs, what was your role prior to that?
I was actually in the field of SAP, so basically all around yeah, securing SAP systems
Yeah.
and just a general security engineer role. So I basically went straight from the engineer to the CISO, and that's pretty much it. So there was no steps in between, but yeah.
And what sort of, without naming the organization, what sort of organization was it, the first one that you worked for?
I mean, it was one of Switzerland's biggest, let's say, without naming the organization, it's kind of
Yeah.
hard.
Okay. Can we talk about the type of organization, or is that going to give it away as well?
I mean, they're basically like the main focus is on, I say logistics, but they also have like a really strong part of like public transportation, and they also have like a foot in the financial sector and stuff like that. But I mean, it's publicly viewable on my LinkedIn, so everybody who checks my profile basically knows where I started. But I was like,
Okay. As long as you don't mind us mentioning that, I just didn't want
yeah,
you to say things that you didn't want
that's all
to.
good.
Okay.
No, in
And
the end,
so
yeah, all good.
first couple of days were tough. Talk to me about how did you start? So you've got your laptop, you're sat down at your desk. What do you do? What's the first thing you do
Um,
apart from panic?
To be honest, yeah, apart from panicking, no, I just wanted to say grab a coffee, but no, that's no, the thing is when I basically started out, obviously I knew what I was getting into to some extent at least. So I was basically back then checking like, hey, how do you start out as a CISO? Or just how do you generally start out at C level? And then everybody starts talking about your like first 100 days or your first 90 days,
Yeah.
120 days, whatnot. So you get into that spiral there where you say, okay, what's basically what something that I want to achieve in this role. Basically, what's on my agenda in that sense. And so yeah, basically I started out with some key objectives that I wanted to push through and basically follow up on. And then obviously I had some meetings with like the CIO and the CEO of the company that I just joined, and basically we're like, okay, let's go and start really fresh on the topic of security, do some expectation management in that sense. Like, what do you expect in terms of cybersecurity? What do you expect of basically data protection? What do you expect of me as the CISO? Where should I focus on, in your opinion? And basically, then obviously had my own ideas as well. And then it was basically down to aligning their ideas and visions with mine, and which gave it like a starting point and at least like a push into the right direction. And I mean, it kind of secures the position at the beginning as well, because if you can show that you actually achieved something in the beginning, um, then yeah, obviously they say, okay, you achieved something that we both agreed on, which is important for the company and whatnot. So yeah, that's actually how I
That's
started out.
that's really really interesting. You mentioned the word aligning the vision with the business, and you mentioned about their idea of what security was. Let's
Yeah.
take it a step further than that. How important was you understanding the business and how that worked?
Obviously, yes, that's a huge part as well, because you have to align your stuff with the business strategy. And let's just say, as an example, basically, if they say we want to get into a whole cloud strategy and cloud first, cloud only, whatnot, and you're basically trying to secure everything that's on premise, then you're basically not aligned. But I mean, having like a clear understanding, and at some point, at least when you start out doing like a whole stakeholder management thing and starting to basically interview people and basically meet them for a coffee and then talk to the head of IT,
Yeah,
like, hey, what's going on
building
in your department?
relationships. Yeah,
Exactly, building relationships and then seeing what's everybody doing, and then basically piecing the puzzle together, I guess. It what really really helps, because it kind of starts translating like the whole company vision and what the business is doing, and basically seeing where they want to be in, let's say, 5 years. And because all the departments kind of have their own agenda of
of
achieving
course.
that, let's say, that goal where you want to develop yourself into as a company. um, so basically just piecing everything together and then saying, okay, there's like a certain red line that goes through all of those topics, and then basically just wrap security right around that, and see that you can basically work with all departments at the same time and basically help them, security as an enabler and not just as a disabler, but
Yeah.
yeah, trying to go in that, yeah, that path.
No, makes absolute sense. So for someone coming from then an engineering background, how have you found that transition to dealing with the board, dealing as a manager, I suppose, as a leader in the organization, and perhaps learning the language of the business if you haven't had to speak that before? Has that been, two questions, has that been a steep learning curve? And
Yeah.
second part of that, which I thought might be yes,
Yeah.
how did you address that? So where do you go for those resources to learn those skills? What did you do?
I guess
Excuse
at
me.
some point, basically, it's learning by doing to some extent.
Yeah.
You just have to talk to those people, and I mean, they are humans after all. Obviously, they have like another, let's say, they look through the different, they look at the business from a different perspective, and basically just say, okay, we have like the whole monetary business material side approach to it, and you're basically coming from your security part. But obviously, they are humans after all, and basically saying, hey, look, what are you trying to achieve there, and I'm trying to support you guys, and basically getting that aligned. Obviously it's a steep learning curve, because at the beginning, I mean, and some stuff that you find online already prepares you for it, basically
Yeah.
condensing information, simplifying it, that even non-techies on the board will understand it, working with colors and arrows and dots and lines and graphs and whatnot, and
You're talking my
basically
language now, Michael. Pictures and lines. There we
yeah,
go.
exactly. Basically showing, do we have like upwards or downwards trends or whatnot. And so I think at the beginning it's kind of tricky to. I mean, it's not that tricky to condense the information, but the tricky part is to condense it to the right information.
Yeah,
And I
100%.
think that's where really the learning by doing thing comes in. And obviously the learning curve is pretty steep. And I mean, what truly helped was talking with people in different roles, and basically going to, let's say, like going to conventions, joining events, talking to other people, basically talking to people from your own personal network who have been in a, let's say, more or less leadership managerial role. It doesn't really matter if they are CISOs as well, but just generally talking to people at the same height in the company at that sense, if that makes sense from
It
a role
does.
perspective, hierarchy perspective. It does kind of help because obviously the head of IT does have, for example, when I talked to him, he had like the same challenges, like condensing his information and presenting it to the board. And I mean, at some point, people are used to having information presented in a certain way. And he's been
Yeah.
in the company for years. So I was like, okay, how do you present your stuff to the board? Do you have like any cool templates that I could reuse just for security? Because in that sense, they came in the same style, the same
And
design.
they're used to that format, and they're definitely going to pay
Exactly.
attention to it. Yeah,
And then
completely
it's not like,
understand.
hey, the new CISO brings in new slides, new topics, new everything, and basically everything new is dangerous, and we don't want that. So
Yeah.
before that backfires, I was like, okay, let's go with the safe approach and see, to reuse some certain stuff that's already around and that people are used to, which might cause the least resistance in that sense.
100%. That makes sense. Before we get on to the main topic, which is challenges and opportunities, I'm going to just jump back to a couple of questions that
Yeah,
have
sure.
come in. Prashant's come out with a couple of really good ones here. I'm going to show this one first. Let me move you to the top so you don't get your body cut in half. There we go. What has been your defining moment since becoming a CISO? What a great question, Prashant. I'm going to nick that one for my
Oh,
future shows. Thank you.
defining moment. Okay, I think there's not been like the most defining moment in that sense, but if I look at like the top 2 or 3 ones or something like that, I'd say definitely having the first external auditors come in and basically audit your work and ask you all those super detailed questions about what you've been doing, and basically going through the audit and coming out successful in the end, which is basically one small achievement in that sense. But it does help because in the beginning, I think everybody that starts out in the role or just like in any higher security role, kind of with everything that you read on social media, and basically you have to be like the most open-minded and visionary leader and whatnot. Basically, everybody kind of suffers from a certain imposter syndrome. When I'm,
Oh,
I'm always saying.
yeah.
So I guess basically having that approval and that reassurance from the auditors that basically what I did actually paid off and is actually working as planned and intended, kind of did help me settle in the role and become a little bit more relaxed, and basically the ease of mind kicked in, so to speak.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are stressful moments when you are a CISO, but definitely that was one of the first ones. And obviously, defining moments. Basically, when you present something to the board and they start wrapping their head around security, why it's important, and you start to see a certain culture change, and you see that you get more.
Like a mic drop moment when it suddenly slots into
Sorry,
place. Yeah.
but I think that those two, like management commitment, gaining that, and having good audits, is like the two most defining moments there.
Thank you. I mean, when we first spoke, I told you a bit about my background, and we were talking about stress and pressure
Mm.
quite a lot. So before I move on to the next questions, how do you cope with that stress and pressure? What do you use as an outlet, and do you have any recommendations for other people who are under pressure as to how to cope with that?
I mean, I think there's like no perfect solution because everybody's different and everybody calms down in a different way. But I guess what I'm trying to do is find something that's basically completely offline. So what I tend to is basically I love doing barbecue, and
Yeah.
at least here in Switzerland, you don't really get like proper good American barbecue and stuff like that. So I'm trying to uphold that in my backyard with my own
Love that.
smoker and throwing a brisket on and stuff like that. And then basically you're sitting out there with a beer in your hand and basically spritzing your brisket and whatnot and tending to your barbecue. That's basically.
Decompressing anything that isn't work, and having the opportunity just to not think for a little while.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Basically staying away from everything that's more or less connected to the internet. And
Yeah.
basically
Which is increasingly more difficult as
yeah,
time goes on,
I'm
I
basically
feel.
focusing on something that's completely offline. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah, thank you. Carrying on with Prashant's questions,
Mm.
talking about the stress. So, have you ever thought about going back to doing a technical role since becoming a CISO? I don't know if that's related to the stress or whether that's just a generic question.
It's probably not directly related to the stress,
No.
but but sometimes I do think like, oh yeah, my role as an engineer was kind of more relaxing and a little bit more stress free than the CISO role. But obviously, apart from that, now I think yes, sometimes obviously life would be easier as an engineer, but also you do face certain challenges there as well. but actively thinking about going back, no, not that I could
it's not
recall
you,
or
is it?
remember. I think I'm quite happy in a CISO role, and at least what's an advantage is bringing the technical background into like that management position also helps when talking to engineers, to developers right now, because you do speak their language, you
And
understand.
do you find that helps with the buy-in from that side of the team as well? Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Prashant, hope that answered your question. It's his question next leads us nicely into one of the challenges that a lot of CISOs are facing at the moment, which is the introduction of AI at a fairly fast pace over the last sort of 18 months to 2 years. And it's his question before we kick off into that subject is, what are your thoughts on using AI to bounce ideas off of, essentially using it as your own consultant?
Let's obviously look at the most popular model, let's say ChatGPT in that sense. With that language model and with the knowledge that it's based on and the knowledge that is incorporated in that generative AI model in the chat assistant, basically the knowledge is somewhat A, limited, and B, to some part, it's not really up to date, because I mean, ChatGPT does cut off at a certain point. Obviously, using AI is a really cool thing because it comes in really handy. Basically, let's just say you want to push an email to all employees right before holiday season, and you're kind of struggling to find the right words to say, hey, please, if you travel with your laptop, keep it safe, don't plug anything in, don't connect to open Wi-Fi's and stuff like that, whatnot. So a little bit of like an awareness email. Using ChatGPT in that sense to say, hey, please provide me a draft is like a good starting point, and that definitely helps. But just using it right away and basically just copy pasting stuff and using that for I don't know, for basically your own policies in your own company, that doesn't really work because you need to tailor it down, adjust it to your company, adjust it to your needs and stuff like that. So it's a good starting point, but it's not wisdom's end, so to speak.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And not from a security perspective, I use it sometimes for a little bit of inspiration. So if I'm struggling to write something, I'll use that for a few
I
prompts.
think the inspiration
But I
is
find
probably
that,
what is the best about it.
yeah, I find the problem is you can spot everyone's AI content all over social media because it writes it in such a specific way. And I think it's great to use it for the inspiration, but you've got to put it in your own words.
Yeah,
And you've
I mean,
got to
you need
rewrite that.
tailor
And
it down and basically adjust it to your company, to your needs, to basically your audience in that sense. But like I said, good starting point, cool tool to use, but yeah, it's not basically.
Yeah, and I think like JJ says, good to see you, JJ. AI lacks context, and it is very generic. And I think that's definitely worth mentioning. I was gonna move on to talking about the challenges around AI, but we have got another question that's quickly popped in that I'm going to bring up first. And Prashant's run away after asking this question, so let's see how this goes. Here we go. As a CISO, which is more important? The right skill set, the right mindset, or the right ability or diversity?
Okay, well, I guess for me personally, it's mindset, and I think wrapping your head around the whole topic of security and all the challenges that you face is like the most important part to basically stay on top of the game in that sense, because everything else in terms of skill set and ability, diversity, whatnot. Okay, diversity maybe not that much, but at least skill set and ability, you can learn it. You can basically dig into textbooks, read through some content, study some material, whatnot. It's basically what I always say as well when you hire people. I mean, hire people for the person behind it. And basically, if they're lacking a skill, give them the training that they need. Because after all, you want somebody who fits in your team, into the company, and who doesn't basically ruin the team spirit or something like that. So hire somebody for the person and then basically provide them with the training. Obviously, if you find somebody that goes a little bit into war on talents now, whatnot, if you find somebody who brings like the full package, then obviously go for it, hire them. But as well as in the CISO,
it's quite rare.
there, I think mindset is probably the most important part.
Yeah, thank you. And I think Prashant's response, if I can speak for you, Prashant, is if you could just repeat that to every hiring manager and HR function out there in the marketplace, everyone would really appreciate it. Thank you, Prashant. Thank you, Michael. Last question before we move on. From Kaya. What role do you think quantum computing will be an issue for a CISO in the future and for security in general?
I think definitely with quantum computing coming up and the increased power of those calculations, especially when it comes to decryption and encryption and breaking the encryption, basically, it's definitely a challenge. But I guess it's the same issue with ChatGPT, or if you look at any other emerging technology in that sense. Basically, adapting it early on, focusing on it early on, and basically finding ways to use it for yourself to protect the company, protect basically what you're trying to achieve with your information security goals, will probably be the key to being able to successfully manage the whole topic of quantum computing. Because I guess from my point of view, because from what we are doing as a company, we're working together with a Fraunhofer Institute in Germany, and they are really deep into testing and playing around with quantum computing and stuff like that. And it's cool to be like in that project to some extent and gaining knowledge and basically adapting stuff and making it already future proof in that sense. But I think it's the whole topic is around the time to market, so to speak. So basically, if you hop onto the trend too late, then you will have more challenges than just embracing it when it basically comes out and starting to adapt it right away. No matter it, obviously, you have to look at costs and applicability and whatnot, feasibility. But I guess being at right there when it comes out and when it comes out big, staying on that trend will be what solves that challenge.
Yeah, and that leads on to AI as a challenge, I think, doesn't it?
It does.
How do we educate people regarding the new challenges around?
I do, yes, because the topic is if you look at this, at awareness trainings in general, and for example, like especially new joiners when they come into the company, and especially if you move around like the bigger companies, the big four or whatnot, or like the bigger companies here in Switzerland. I mean, they're like 5 or 6 ones where basically everybody has been to and basically everybody worked for them or whatnot, and then you move to like the next big company. And your awareness training in the beginning when you join the company is always the same. It's basically what's a phishing email, basically browsing securely the internet, and your password should look like this. And if you see somebody leaving documents in the printer, somebody forgot to lock their screen and whatnot. So it's just basically the same stuff at every place. Just maybe I don't know. It's just like more or less cool with videos, more or less interactive or whatnot, or just text based, but it's fairly the same content. And what I'm trying to do is basically move away from that, because if you hire people, then I'm not just saying to ignore like the whole basic training on passwords and what's a phishing mail and stuff like that, but to not just make that like the training content and say this is what everything is about in terms of security. Because especially with like DeepL or JetGPT, and especially for us as a company which is working mostly in terms of software development and in the field of software development, it's really important to educate your users to not just basically copy paste code into ChatGPT and then say, "Hey, please for my client, company XY, whatever, please comment this source code," and then basically they copy paste it just back into their coding platform. That's not the idea. So basically, teaching them the right way and shifting away from the whole basic training. Obviously, basic training is important. You can't ignore it all the way, but also bringing in new content and teaching them how to properly use generative AI tools, no matter if it's DeepL, ChatGPT, whatever you name it, or whatever, some Copilot, GitHub Copilot stuff. Basically, educating them how to really use those tools without exposing the company to more risk than necessary, and making them aware, basically, hey, where do we have like certain boundaries or guidelines and what they should be able to do and what they shouldn't do and stuff like that. And also basically not just the awareness part, but also demonstrating them what could happen if you basically use code that's been generated by AI, in terms of clients that say, hey, basically we paid you guys for your expertise to develop certain code, and now you just use it straight from ChatGPT. That's not what we ordered. And you get like your lawsuit, reputational damage and whatnot. And basically, obviously, you can go further down the rabbit hole of all the issues that could potentially be caused by using ChatGPT in that sense, or any other tools. But I guess it's an important point to educate users how to deal with that new technology.
Yeah, and I think, like you say, it's how we educate those users as well, because the multiple choice kind of testing
Yeah.
systems that are in place at the moment that are very generic really aren't doing the job, are they? And I think from speaking to a lot of other leaders on here, it's about relating it to their own home environments and relating it to them personally first
That's
before you
one
can then
thing
start relating it
that's
to the
pretty cool
business.
and helps, yes. What we also do in Switzerland, at least, and some other companies here are doing it as well and picked up. I mean, gamification isn't new, but we kind of try to go from basic gamification where you just have your like drag and drop stuff and click on your e-learning platform or whatnot. So what people are trying to do here is basically go like one step further and build whole cybersecurity escape rooms where you can go in
Yeah.
with your whole team or incorporate it into some certain Dungeon and Dragons awareness game or whatnot, and basically going away from the ordinary. And I think that's basically the message there to basically get people involved and get people to focus on the training, because otherwise they
Yeah.
will be like, oh look, just another multiple choice training. Oh, okay, I do know the answers to this. Click, 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 done, completed. See you next year. Bye bye. That's not the
Yeah.
idea. And basically, when you come in with something new, they get excited. They want to see what it's all about, and they focus on it. And if they are interested in something, then the learning obviously sticks even better. And basically, the security outcome in terms of a culture change and whatnot is way more efficient than just providing them with another click-through multiple choice training in an e-learning platform.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's moving away from that checkbox mentality, isn't it? Of that's okay, they've done the security training now, they're absolutely
Yeah.
fine. When in reality, that's not quite the case. Last question, then, because we're nearly out of time. I want to talk about geopolitical challenges. The world is in a pretty strange place at the moment. I think we can all agree that it's not a great place to be. What particular challenges do you have in your role, considering everything that's going on at the moment?
I think the most part is to identify new risks in that sense, which just emerge basically from the whole change in geopolitical events and whatnot, basically what's happening around the world, with nation state actors, ransomware groups, and whatnot. And especially for us as a software development company or digitalization provider for other companies, we are the main goal of, I'd say, supply chain attacks, but not just to basically compromise us, but to get the hands on a bigger target by basically manipulating our code, basically getting in through us into a bigger company, into a bank, into manufacturing industry, leading provider or whatnot, or even into like a government entity where we have clients from and stuff like that. So I guess the biggest challenges are around basically seeing those new risks emerging and being up to date with trends and what's happening, and having like a certain especially with we're not the only software development company in the world, obviously, and with other companies our size, trying to follow the media and see if they are being targeted, and to see if there's like a certain trend happening, like more from like a threat intelligence how should I say, from a threat intelligence perspective, and obviously trying to minimize those risks and react preemptively and proactively in that sense against them. But yeah, I mean, challenges and risks emerge everywhere, so it's kind of hard to track them and follow up on them. And I think this is probably the biggest challenge, especially when you expand more into Europe, and with us
Yeah.
having yeah, well, we do have like 18 or 19 countries onboarded in the group right now, where we have locations all over the place, from basically Norway, Finland, Sweden, down to India, even there, even some in Turkey and whatnot. And obviously, some countries are even closer to those geopolitically affected countries than others. And especially checking that there's nothing going on there with malicious insiders, having proper background checks in place and whatnot. It is a real challenge, especially if you want to enforce it down there where you have no real control and no real insight. Yeah.
Yeah. I think Prashant's made a great comment as well, which takes it back to the topic we were talking about before about educating and training people. It says, I know, but the geopolitical discussion here has brought up the question of how do we educate our users around IT infosec hygiene when there are political issues occurring? I mean, should we be doing more as organizations and individuals at the moment? Because I don't seem to see any great trend in an increase of that, Michael.
I I guess probably what most people did as well is basically to inform the users, at least in some way, no matter if it's like a post on the intranet, sending them an email, whatnot, to like, hey, be aware there's a change in geopolitical, in the cyber warfare, basically something is happening in the IT market. Basically be more aware than usual about when you receive emails from external parties or third parties, and if somebody chats you up on Teams or whatnot, just basically tend to those messages with a little extra caution than you usually would. But I guess incorporating like a whole block into a general security awareness training is kind of hard, because I guess for every company that's different, they all face different challenges, and at least just making sure that people are aware, hey, something is going on in the world, I think is like the more important factor than digging down in an awareness training into like a specific risk that you might face, and educating your users on that specific risk. And with all the emerging trends and risks and technology and whatnot, something new pops up tomorrow, and basically that's exactly what compromises your system. Then all the awareness training has been for nothing, basically. So
it has. You'd like to think that governments would get involved at a time like this, wouldn't you? I say like to think because it's clearly not going to happen. But you think it's more for governments to take the initiative and run with that, and start to put some campaigns out there for the general public, because the general public are the ones who are the end users, right? And they're the ones who effectively are protecting the country in whatever way they are, depending on the role that they do. So it should be more pushed onto government. Unfortunately, in this country, our government are too busy arguing amongst themselves and seeing what country we can ship migrants off to look at anything else. But I'm not going to get into politics today, because that could get extremely messy. We won't even talk about leaving Europe, Michael. I'm not even going to get started on that.
No, but I'm totally agreeing with you, especially if I look at what's happening in Switzerland, because we had like the National Center for Cybersecurity, which was basically dealing with everything on like a nation level in terms of information security, cybersecurity, and all the geopolitical stuff. And now basically from a political standpoint, they decided to split their responsibilities and create like a new department, which is then more focused on like the general stuff, and they should only focus on critical infrastructure. And so you basically start bringing more departments in, new people in, and basically everybody wants to have a seat at the table, and everybody starts talking about, hey, we should do this and that and whatnot.
It sounds like the European Parliament, doesn't it?
To some extent, yes, but I mean, Switzerland is not part of the EU, so we do have like
I know.
certain
That's why I said it.
advantages to some extent, but after all, I mean, we are right in the center of Europe, and the world around us is obviously changing itself, and Switzerland is changing as well. And even though they don't admit it to some extent, I guess, they are following along with what's happening globally and in the EU. So, yeah.
Yeah, as Steve Hindle said, Steve's a CISO based in Tampa. That's global. All government discussions are being polarized and division exactly what the bad guys are looking for to exploit. Be more Bill and Ted, be more excellent. I think that's the quote there, Steve, isn't it?
Actually, quite a good one.
It is, yeah. Final question. For any aspiring CISOs watching this, what would your advice be?
I guess the thing is, if you always hesitate to even get into the role and say, hey, I'm not good enough, I don't even apply because I don't bring all those certifications or whatnot, and I don't bring the experience in the background, and I don't know. I think that the biggest thing is, and looking back at how I started in a CISO position, is to actually get started. It's basically what they always say when you want to when you want to start out on YouTube, is basically just hit play or hit record or press play, whatnot, and then basically get in the whole thing. But I guess starting out as a CISO it's less scary than you might think, and basically just try to get into that role, try to wrap your head around it, because with every new start or fresh start, with every new role, there are new challenges, new responsibilities, and basically hesitating from it is basically what causes us to have so many open positions. So just go for it.
So what I'm hearing there is get rid of the imposter syndrome and apply for some jobs. Is that it?
Maybe, yeah. Fill the gaps, and at least from the war on talent perspective, try to help us all, because I guess cybersecurity is a field where we have to be connected and basically start networking, share experiences, share knowledge and whatnot. So we need more people, at least in that field. And I guess yeah, if somebody wants to get into that role, then go for it, because there are so many people that hesitate that in the end nobody basically applies, which is something that is
Yeah.
truly happening, at least here in Switzerland, because sometimes you have an open position and for like 3 or 4 months there's like 0 applications, not a single application, because people just hesitate. And then
Wow.
basically in the end somebody comes and he's like, oh look, I don't have like the perfect profile and I'm missing like this and that certification or whatnot, and I don't have like a bachelor degree, or I have a bachelor degree in a completely other field or whatnot. And you're like, okay, look, you do fit in the company, you do bring like a certain background knowledge, and the rest we can train you, but at least we have somebody, because somebody else is currently doing like 200% and doing those roles, so take the pressure
Yeah.
off him. And yeah, I mean, it's still better than having nobody, and then educating that person and training that person is way more efficient and better, for the company as well, than just leaving that position empty.
And do you think companies are more open now? I mean, I suppose you can speak from a Switzerland perspective. Are they more open now to bringing people on and training them, rather than looking for that unicorn that all the recruiters and hiring managers seem to want, which is X amount of experience by years and that bachelor's degree? Are you seeing a change in Switzerland for that?
Um, I would probably lie if I say that they would have stopped looking for the unicorn. That I mean, obviously, some companies are, yeah, let's say they do stick to the perfect idea of having that ideal candidate that fills every requirement and whatnot. But on the other hand, then obviously there's like the salary question: can they pay that perfect and ideal candidate and whatnot? Or
Yeah.
will it
Or are
be
they prepared to?
easier? Yeah, exactly. Or will it be even easier to just say, okay, let's lower our expectations? And I think there's like a certain shift going on, but it's a shift that is really, really, really specific in terms of the industry, especially with like
Yeah.
IT companies like us, with or companies generally in the field of development or digitalization or whatnot. Basically, in the field of IT, they are a little more open-minded in that sense, because they see the need for cybersecurity. They need a shift. But there are certain companies, basically not just judging on the industry field, but if you look at the recruiters, if you look at the management, and then basically if you look at the perfect candidate that they want, and basically having somebody who goes to the office 5 days a week and home office is a complete no-go and whatnot, and they are still rooted in the old ways, so to speak,
Yeah.
then they will
Good
not
luck.
basically hire somebody and train that person. They will rather leave that position open for the next half year and find somebody who's like the perfect match, even if that person never comes. But
Who wants to drive 2 hours back and forth to work every day
yeah,
to sit in an
exactly.
office? Yeah. Yeah, you're getting rid of a big part of the talent pool there, aren't you? Look, Michael, thank you so much for your time today and the insights that you've given. Are you okay if I drop your LinkedIn profile
Yeah,
in the
sure.
chat
Go
for
for it.
people to connect with you?
Yeah, sure.
Perfect. Didn't want to do that without asking. So there's Michael's LinkedIn profile. If you want to connect with him, please do click on that. I'm sure he'd be pleased to say hello. If you are looking to raise your game in cybersecurity, whether that's breaking into the industry or whether it's looking for that first CISO role, make sure you come and join InfoSec Live, our global community of over 5,000 cyber professionals. If you're brave enough to scan a QR code that you don't know where it's come from, do that. If not, if you're not stupid enough to do that, the link is in the description that you can use. Please join through there as well. I hope everyone in the audience has enjoyed this as much as I have, and thank you all for your input as well with regards to the questions. We are back tomorrow a little bit later, 8 p.m. GMT tomorrow, for another CISO experience with Merit Bayer from Lacework, the field CISO from Lacework. But in the meantime, I'm going to play out with our little jingle. Wish you all a great rest of the day and look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you
See you
very much,
later.
Simon. Thank you, everybody on the chat, and have a nice evening, guys. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.